So guys, I've moved back to Bali, my home for the last 3 years. Obviously I left back in March due to the pandemic, and then I essentially got stuck out of the country or locked out of the country for the past 9 months. But I've just been able to move back to Bali, and while all of the information is still fresh in my head, I thought I would share with you guys the process of moving to Bali in 2020 or 2021, as it's going to be in a few days. Pretty crazy to think that this horrible year is going to be over soon, but you know, we don't really know what's in store for 2021. But one thing that is in store for you, if you want, is that you can indeed move back to Bali. So in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly how I moved back to Bali in 2020 in December. It's currently the 23rd of December, and I got back to Bali on December 20th. So after just under 4 amazing months in Mexico, I was really kind of missing Bali. So I really wanted to look into the options of moving back. I started seeing that a lot of my digital nomad friends that had left Bali in February or March were actually starting to fly back to Bali and were able to get visas. So I contacted a visa agency called Bali E-Visas, and I've actually used them many times before while in Bali. They do business visas, kita, social visas, stuff like that. I contacted them and asked them if they could give me more information on moving back to Bali. They told me there is a new visa called an E-Visa. It's sort of like a business interest visa is what I would call it, for long-term visitors or digital nomads that are interested in moving back to Bali right now, 2020, 2021. Essentially anyone can apply for it, and in this video I'm going to tell you the documents that you need to apply for it, how much it costs, how long it takes, etc. Okay, so the visa process was surprisingly easy. I had to submit a copy of my passport via email. I had to fill out an application form. I had to send a bank statement. I did need proof of travel insurance, but I don't think I needed to send it to them. But anyway, once you apply, Bali Visas will send you the list of requirements that they need, and you just send them via email. It only takes 7 days to process, and the fee was 6 million rupiah or 350 euro. And then 7 days later, I got an email to say that my e-visa had been approved. Then you have 90 days from the day that your visa is approved to enter Bali. So I actually decided to stay in Mexico for 1 extra month as I wanted to travel around, and there was a few things I wanted to see. And then just 3 days ago, I arrived in Bali. So I left Mexico, I guess 6 days ago. It's now December 23rd, and I arrived here on December 20th. So this can all be done very quickly. You know, you can even get a visa within 3 or 4 days if you do the more expensive option. But for me, 7 days was fine. And like I said, within 7 days, I got the email with my visa approval. Now, the next thing that was quite tricky and that you guys will encounter was finding flights. So obviously it depends where you're coming from, whether it's America or the UK, wherever. You know, there's a lot of restrictions right now. Obviously, I get it, on travel and flying, and some airports are closed and some countries won't even let you leave, like, you know, Australia and New Zealand. So of course, where you're coming from is going to play a factor in how easy it is for you to move back to Bali. For me, coming from Mexico, the easiest way would have been to fly via the USA, but I did not have a valid ESTA, and I've heard of people trying to fly via the US right now, European citizens, and getting refused entry into the USA. So I didn't want to risk flying that direction. So I, in the end, had to book with 3 different airlines. I flew from Cancun to Frankfurt with Lufthansa. Then I flew from Frankfurt to Istanbul and Istanbul to Jakarta with Turkish Airlines. And then finally the next morning I flew with AirAsia from Jakarta to Bali. Now, if your flight arrives into Jakarta in the evening, I would say anytime after 6 p.m. or even 5:30 p.m., you won't be able to make it to Bali that evening. The last flight was at 7:30 p.m., but it took over an hour and a half to get through immigration because there are so many checks and so many documents that you need to show. There's so many checkpoints throughout the airport where they're checking your visa, they're checking your COVID test, and checking your other documents. Also on that note, talking about the flights, even though you might find flights on Skyscanner, etc., flying to Bali, there are no international flights to Bali right now. So the international section of Bali airport is not open. You can only fly international into Jakarta. This is the only airport in Indonesia you can fly international into, and then you can fly domestically to the other islands. Every other island or every state within Indonesia has its own separate COVID rules. So even if you get into Indonesia, if you want to go on to Bali or Lombok or another island, you will find that they have their own separate COVID rules that are changing all the time, and you really need to be staying up to date on them. So, for example, to enter Indonesia right now, you need a valid PCR swab test. That's the one that goes up your nose and down your throat, and it needs to be valid for 7 days. Now, I had that. I got my test in Mexico about 2 days before I left, and it was just about valid by the time I arrived because I was flying for almost 3 days to get to Indonesia, and by the time I got to Bali, it was December 20th, so it was the last day that my PCR test was actually valid. They were thinking of changing the rules so that your test needed to be valid or taken within 48 hours of you arriving in Bali, which means that essentially you would kind of have to do one in either Istanbul airport or in Jakarta airport, where they are available and they're not that expensive. But then they changed the rule again back to 7 days. So you really need to be keeping up to date with all of these rules. And for these rules, if you want to stay up to date, there is a Facebook group called Law and Regulations in Indonesia. It's a group on Facebook, and they are really up to date, posting lots of updates about all the changes in the visa policies to get into Indonesia and stuff like that. Also, I recommend following Bali Visas on Instagram. They are really useful. They're the agency that I use to get my visa, and they stay up to date with all the news and all the regulations. You can also follow obviously Indonesian newspapers or news websites to keep up to date, because honestly every single day the rules seem to be changing. Another thing is that when you are flying into Indonesia, like I said, with your negative PCR COVID test, you should have it printed out once or twice, and they are going to stamp it like 6 or 7 times. Like they checked it before I got on the plane in Frankfurt, they checked it in Istanbul, they checked it on arrival in Jakarta, and in Jakarta airport, I think they stamped it 4 separate times, and then they checked it again when I was going to Bali. So by the end of it, I think I had 6 or 7 different valid stamps on my PCR COVID negative test. I was a little bit worried as my test was in Spanish. All the results was in Spanish, but once they saw no detectado, not detected, it was obviously pretty obvious that it was negative, and there was no fuss or no questions asked. Some of the things that you need to keep in mind is that the countries that you're flying through might have their own regulations. So for example, if you fly into Istanbul and then you fly out with a different airline and you have to go through immigration, you might need an E-Visa. When I was flying into Germany, I had to fill in an online help form, which they asked about. And when you're going into Indonesia, you also need to fill in this online help form, which I will link below for you guys to check out. When I was boarding the flight in Frankfurt, Turkish Airlines did ask me how long I was planning to stay in Bali. Even though the visa is valid for a maximum of 6 months, it's actually only valid for 60 days to start with, and then you extend it when you get to Bali. So I actually had a sort of fake flight ticket booked out for the end of February, so I was able to show them, oh yeah, potentially I'm leaving Bali within 2 months. They didn't ask to see that ticket, but sometimes airlines do, so I always have one just in case, which is a proof of return ticket. Some other things that I had either screenshotted on my phone or printed was my accommodation for my first few weeks, proof of my travel insurance, my E-Visa for Bali or for Indonesia, and then I also had printed out the Indonesian health form, which I filled out the night before, the German health form, which I filled out the night before, and any other sort of documents that I thought they might ask. So really have everything printed out and kept in some sort of document wallet. They didn't actually ask for the printed E-Visa, they didn't ask for the accommodation, they didn't ask about my travel insurance, but I was told that sometimes they do, and it's better just to have them all prepared, just in case. So most of the paperwork is checked, like I said, when you're going through the airports on your way to Indonesia. And once you've gotten through Jakarta airport and you've filled out all the paperwork, there isn't that many checks after that point. So once you actually board your flight to Bali and your flight is landing in Bali, you don't have to worry anymore. The anxiety is lifted, you're getting into Bali, all is well. They've already checked your documents, and it really feels like a big relief. I think I actually cried happy tears when I was on the plane about to land in Bali. One extra thing I'm going to say, like I said, you really need to keep up to date on all of the latest developments around the world and the news, and especially the news here in Indonesia, because as of today, they actually announced that they will not be issuing these E-Visas for people from Australia, the United Kingdom, Denmark, and I think maybe the Netherlands. Essentially anywhere where this new mutant strain of coronavirus has been found that apparently has a much higher transmission rate, and it was just found the week before Christmas in the UK, and it seems that a lot of people are becoming infected with this new type of coronavirus. So Indonesian government has decided for now, I don't know how long this will last, that they will not approve e-visas for people from those countries. If you have your e-visa already, but you just haven't got to Bali yet, you're okay. If you're already in Bali and you need to extend your visa, that's okay as well. So like I said, you just have to be keeping so up to date on the latest developments. Okay, so I think that is it. If you guys have any questions, obviously feel free to put a question down below in a comment, or you can DM me on Instagram. My username is @JanetNewenham. I will put it on the screen here. Be sure to subscribe to my channel if you want to see more travel videos and more videos about the process of moving to Bali. In my very next video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to find a long-term villa here in Bali and exactly how cheap it really is in 2020. Thank you guys for watching, and see you guys in my next video.